The wind howled across the dusty colony plains of Virella 9, a small outpost where few humans ever stayed long. Dr. Mason Hale, a quiet engineer with calloused hands and tired eyes, worked alone in a small workshop made of scavenged metal sheets. He came to Virella 9 to escape the wars, to live quietly among the traders and exiles. But fate had other plans. One evening, as two suns dipped below the red horizon, a figure appeared at his door. Shivering, it was small, cloaked and trembling, clutching something tightly in both hands. When Mason opened the door, a faint clicking voice said, "Please, help my child." The cloak fell away, revealing an alien woman, her eyes glowing faint blue, and in her arms was a young girl with milky white pupils. Sightless, the girl's breathing was shallow, her skin pale silver. Mason froze. He recognized the markings. They were from the Virelon royal line, the very same species that once led the fleets which bombarded Earth's outer colonies. "I'm no doctor," Mason said softly. "I build machines." The mother looked desperate. "Machines can bring sight, yes?" Her trembling hands reached forward. "Please." Human, something in her voice, fear, love, and despair all tangled, moved Mason in a way he hadn't felt in years. He nodded slowly. "Let me see what I can do." For days, he worked tirelessly. He dismantled drones, stripped down scanners, and studied the aliens' strange neural patterns every night. He heard whispers from nearby traders, rumors that a human was hiding a royal. If the Virellan guard found them, both would die, but Mason didn't stop. He soldered fine circuits, shaped a delicate frame, and coded a micro-AI capable of interpreting optical signals for the aliens' unique nervous system. The mother watched in silence, often clutching her child's hand as Mason's tools hummed through the night. Finally, after a week, he placed the thin visor over the child's face. A moment of silence filled the room. The little girl blinked, once, twice, and gasped. Her blind eyes flickered with faint light, and she looked up, whispering, "Mother, I can see." Tears fell down the alien mother's face, her strange translucent skin glowing softly. Mason smiled faintly. "It's not perfect." But before he could finish, the ground shook. Distant sonic booms echoed through the valley outside. Clouds of dust rose. Armored transports descending from orbit, the insignia of the Virelon Royal Guard. Gleaming gold and red appeared through the storm. The mother's voice trembled. "They found us." She looked at Mason, eyes filled with guilt. "You must run." But Mason stood still. Looking out toward the horizon where ships landed like falling stars, he whispered, "They're not here for you, they're here for me." Because he knew the truth, his signal work had been traced. And now the Empire wanted the human who gave their royal blood something forbidden: hope. The night sky of Virella 9 burned with streaks of gold as the royal dropships broke through the clouds. Dr. Mason Hale watched from his workshop doorway, his jaw tight, the air trembling with the roar of engines. He could see their searchlights sweeping across the sand plains, cutting through the darkness like blades. He knew he had only minutes. Inside, the alien mother, her name Sarai, clutched her daughter close. The child blinked, her new visor glowing faint blue as it synchronized with her nervous system. She could see now, though her sight was still blurry. She looked up at Mason, confused and frightened. "Why are they angry, Mr. Mason?" He forced a thin smile. "Because they don't understand kindness." "Kid," Sarai's voice shook, "they will kill us all if they find you." Mason nodded, gathering his old gear from a dusty chest, an electromagnetic pulse shield, a portable drive, and his old ID tag from the Terran Engineering Corps. "I've been running all my life," he said quietly. "Guess it's time to do it again." Outside, thunder rolled, not from the sky but from approaching walkers. Massive machines with glowing red visors scanning the ground for heat signatures. Each one carried the crest of the Queen's Guard, her most loyal hunters trained never to fail. Mason led the mother and child through the back door into the canyons behind his workshop. The rocky terrain shimmered under the twin moons, their shadows stretching long and sharp. "Stay low," Mason whispered, activating a small drone that projected a false thermal trail toward the east. It might buy them 10 minutes, maybe less. Sarai followed, her movement graceful even under fear, her voice trembling. "Why help us, human? Our kind brought war to yours." Mason didn't look back. "A child doesn't start wars," he said, "and she deserves to see the stars." They reached an old mine shaft hidden behind a collapsed ridge. Mason guided them inside, setting up a small barrier to block sensor scans. The faint hum of the power field mixed with the sound of the girl's breathing. For a moment there was peace. Then a sound echoed through the tunnels. A metallic clank. Deliberate and steady footsteps. Mason's hand tightened around his pulse gun. From the darkness emerged a tall figure in silver armor, the emblem of the Royal Guard etched into his chest plate. He removed his helmet, revealing deep violet skin and eyes burning with duty. "Human," he said coldly, "you have violated royal law by altering the Queen's bloodline." Mason stood firm, his heart pounding. "I gave a blind kid her sight. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty." The guard's gaze flicked to the child behind him, her visor reflecting his face like a mirror. "She can see," he murmured, his tone shifting for a brief moment. "You truly did it." But then his comm unit crackled, and orders came through. "Capture the human alive. Bring the Queen's heir unharmed." The guard raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Mason triggered his pulse device, unleashing a burst of static that shorted out every sensor within 50 meters. The cavern filled with blue light, and the guard staggered back, armor sparking. Mason grabbed Sarai's hand. "Run!" They sprinted deeper into the mine as explosions thundered behind them. Rocks fell, dust filled the air, and the child stumbled, clutching Mason's arm. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her through the collapsing tunnels. Sarai looked back and saw the guard rising again, injured but relentless. "They won't stop," she cried. "Not until we're dead." Mason gritted his teeth. "Then they'll have to earn it." As they reached the far exit of the tunnels, the night opened before them, a vast desert glowing under alien stars. Mason stared at the horizon, where an old Terran ship lay half-buried in the sand. It was his once, broken and forgotten, but maybe, just maybe, it could still fly behind them. The sound of engines grew louder. The Royal Guard were closing in. The hunt had truly begun, and Mason knew the galaxy would never forgive what he had just done, because he had given a royal child something no empire could allow. Hope. Far above the red deserts of Virella 9, the royal flagship Virellan Majesty floated in silence. Its vast silver hull reflected the twin suns like a mirror of judgment. Inside, corridors pulsed with soft light as soldiers marched in perfect rhythm. At the center of the throne chamber sat Queen Alisera of Virella, her crystal crown gleaming with cold authority. A projection flickered before her. The lead guard kneeling, armor scorched, voice trembling. "Your Grace," he said. The human escaped. He restored the child's sight. For a heartbeat, the Queen said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then her voice came, soft as silk and sharp as glass. "You mean he tampered with royal blood across the galaxy? It was law. No creature outside the Empire could touch or alter a royal being. To do so was to defy divine order." But when the Queen heard her daughter's voice over the transmission, whispering, "Mother, I can see," the chamber fell into silence. Every noble froze, uncertain if they had just witnessed a miracle or a crime. The Queen closed her eyes, torn between pride and fury. "Find that human," she said finally, her voice shaking. "Bring him to me alive." Outside, fleets mobilized, thousands of drones sweeping through the skies of Virella 9. The hunt expanded beyond the desert. Now the whole planet watched. Down below, Mason worked feverishly beneath the wreckage of his old ship. He had powered up one engine using scavenged coils and solar converters. Sarai stood beside him, holding a portable scanner, her face lit by the soft glow of the readouts. "You can really fly this?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. Mason grinned faintly. "Fly, maybe. Land? Not so sure." The child sat nearby, watching stars through her new visor. She whispered their names in wonder, translating them into her own alien tongue. Every word sounded like music for Mason. That sound alone made every risk worth it. But peace lasted only minutes. A piercing sound tore through the canyon, the scream of plasma drives. Royal hunter ships were closing fast. Mason looked up, eyes narrowing. "They found us." He slammed the final panel shut, the ship's core humming to life. "Sarai, get her inside." "Strap in tight." Sarai hesitated. "They will never stop, Mason. Not while the Queen breathed." He wiped sweat from his brow. "Then I'll just have to change her mind." The ground trembled as energy bolts rained from above. Turning sand into molten glass, Mason fired the thrusters. The old Terran ship groaning but rising. Flames burst from its sides, engines screaming against gravity. For a moment, it looked like the desert itself was trying to hold them down. A blast hit the hull, spinning the ship sideways. The child screamed. Sarai held her tight, and Mason fought the controls. "Hold on!" he shouted, sparks flying across the cockpit. Then with a final surge, the engines roared and the ship tore through the storm clouds into open sky. Behind them, the hunters gave chase from her throne. Queen Alicera watched the chase feed in real time. Her daughter's laughter echoed faintly through the comm link. And for the first time in years, the queen felt something she did not expect. Tears. The royal advisors urged her, "Your Grace, we must destroy the human." But Alicera raised a hand, her gaze fixed on the stars where the human ship vanished. "No," she said slowly. "Not yet," the council murmured in confusion. But the queen's eyes burned with curiosity. "Find out who he was before the wars," she ordered. "No human makes miracles by accident." Meanwhile, Mason's ship drifted through the stratosphere, smoke trailing behind. Inside, alarms blared, but he smiled through the chaos. Sarai looked at him in disbelief. "You risked everything for a child not even your own." Mason's voice softened. "Once, long ago, I had one too. She never got the chance to see." The child reached out and touched his hand gently. "Thank you, human," she said in her broken accent. Mason smiled faintly. "Name's Mason, kid." "Not human," she laughed softly. The sound pure and bright. Outside, the stars opened before them, endless and alive, but far away, in the darkness of space. Hundreds of tracking beacons lit up. The Queen's fleet was already moving, and her next command would decide the fate of both species. Because for the first time in her reign, Alicera did not know if she wanted the human dead or protected. The ship drifted beyond the edge of Varela 9's gravity well, leaving behind a burning sky and rising dust storms. Inside the cockpit, warning lights blinked, but Mason kept his focus steady, hands gripping the flight sticks with practiced calm. He had flown worse ships in worse wars, and somehow always lived to see another sunrise. Sarai sat behind him, clutching her daughter, eyes wide as the endless dark unfolded before them. "Where will we go?" she whispered. Mason stared ahead. "Anywhere they can't reach us." He opened a cracked navigation console, lines of old Terran code flickering across the screen. A faint smile touched his lips. "There's still one place in this system they don't know about." The child tilted her head, visor softly glowing. "Is it safe?" He looked at her reflection in the glass. It was once before the war, outside. The faint shimmer of distant stars painted the hull in silver light, and for the first time Mason allowed himself a breath of peace. But peace never lasted long back on the flagship. Queen Alicera stood before a stasis vault. Inside hovered a flickering hologram, a human soldier's record from 30 years ago. Her advisor spoke carefully. "We found him. Your Grace, Mason Hale, Terran engineer, survivor of the siege of Arctis." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "Arctis," she whispered, the word tasting like ash. That name belonged to a world long dead, burned during the final war between humans and Virulans. The advisor nodded. "He was declared missing in action after saving a refugee convoy. Your convoy." Silence filled the chamber, heavy and impossible. Alicera's fingers trembled against the holographic projection. She remembered smoke, fire, and a wounded human pulling her from a collapsing dome. He had carried her, a stranger from a dying species. She had never known his name until now her breath caught. "He saved me." The guard commander stepped forward. "Then it is all the more reason to capture him, Majesty. Sentiment cannot cloud royal law." But the Queen's eyes glimmered with something deeper than duty. "Law was written by those who feared compassion," she murmured. "Perhaps it is time it was rewritten." Far from her throne, Mason's ship entered the dark orbit of a shattered moon. Beneath its fractured crust lay an old Terran outpost, long abandoned, long forgotten. He guided the ship down through debris clouds, landing softly among ancient towers of rusted steel. "This was once a listening post," he explained quietly. "We used it to warn colonies of incoming fleets." Sarai stepped out, gazing at the broken Earth technology with curiosity and sadness. "This place feels haunted," she said. Mason nodded. "It is, by memories." He knelt beside a cracked metal plate and brushed away dust, revealing faded words. "TEC Outpost 47. To protect all sentient life." The child read the inscription slowly through her visor. "Protect all life." Mason smiled faintly. That was the idea. Once. Sarai placed her hand on the plate too, her voice soft. "And now you protect ours." They spent the night inside the base. Mason repaired the comms array, while the child fell asleep beside the flickering light of a fusion lamp. For the first time, he felt something close to family again. Sarai watched him silently. "You are not like the others," she said. "You heal instead of destroy." Mason's eyes grew distant. "That's because I've already seen enough destruction." He looked at his old hands, trembling slightly. "And I made my share of it too." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "The visor I built for your daughter. It's based on tech I once designed for targeting drones. I used to make machines that killed, not saved." Sarai's expression softened. "Then maybe this is your redemption." Mason didn't answer, but the flicker in his eyes said enough. Outside, the stars turned slowly. Cold and endless and far away, the Queen stared at the same sky, wondering if the human she once owed her life to could ever forgive her empire. At dawn, Mason stood on the outpost roof scanning the horizon. His sensors detected faint signals, encrypted. Imperial drawing closer, he clenched his jaw. "They found us again." Sarai rushed to his side. Fear rising in her eyes. "Will you fight them?" she asked. He shook his head. "No." "I'll talk to her." She stared at him, stunned. "The Queen will never listen." Mason looked at the glowing visor on the child's face. The one thing that tied all their fates together. "She might," he said quietly, "if she remembers what it means to see." As the first royal cruisers entered orbit, the outpost hummed to life for the first time in decades. Mason transmitted a single message into the stars, a signal encoded with his name, and a request. "Queen Elisera, I'm done running." His voice echoed across channels long silent, and on her throne the Queen stood slowly. Her advisors shouted in panic, but she silenced them with a glance. "Prepare my ship," she said, her tone calm but heavy with fate. "The human wants to talk." The night over the shattered moon was silent except for the hum of the old Terran outpost. Dust drifted through the faint gravity field as Mason stood on the landing platform. He watched the royal cruiser descend slowly from orbit, its silver hull glowing like a falling star. For a long moment, he felt the weight of history pressing on his chest. He had once fought against ships like this. Now one was coming not to destroy but to decide. Sarai stood behind him, clutching her daughter close. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "If you face her, you may not return." Mason's voice was steady. "I didn't help your child to run forever." He turned to the little girl and smiled softly. "Whatever happens, don't be afraid." The child nodded, her visor flickering gently. "You are brave." "Mason." The cruiser's landing thrusters roared, shaking the platform. A ramp unfolded, gleaming under the alien moonlight. From its mist-filled corridor, a figure emerged, tall, elegant, radiant. Queen Elisera of Virella, her armor made of living crystal, her crown dim with sorrow. Around her, guards fanned out, weapons low but ready. Mason didn't move. His gaze locked on her eyes. They were the same eyes he had seen once before, in a burning city. When he had carried her to safety, the Queen stopped a few steps away. "Mason Hale," she said, her voice smooth yet trembling with memory. "It seems even death couldn't keep you hidden." Mason gave a small, tired smile. "You remember then?" "I remember everything," she replied. "You saved my life during the war." "And you destroyed my world after," Mason answered quietly. The words hung heavy in the air. Even the guards looked uneasy. Elisera lowered her gaze. "War makes monsters of all of us." Mason shook his head. "No, choices do." He stepped closer, not as an enemy, but as a man who had seen too much pain. "I didn't build that visor to defy your empire," he said. "I built it because a child should never live in darkness." The Queen's eyes glimmered, and she looked past him. Her daughter stood near the entrance, visor glowing like a new dawn. When the child saw her mother, she hesitated, then smiled shyly. "Mother," she whispered. "I can see you." Something inside the Queen broke. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached forward, hand trembling. She fell to her knees and embraced her daughter. For the first time, no words of law or duty left her lips. Only a whisper, "My star, my little one." The guards exchanged uneasy looks. One finally stepped forward. "Your Grace, the Council will not allow this." The Queen rose slowly, her voice filled with steel. "The Council will obey." She turned to Mason, her expression unreadable. "You risked your life for her, though you had every reason to hate me." "Because hate blinds just as much as darkness," Mason said. "Someone has to stop it." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Two survivors of two broken worlds, facing each other under alien stars. Then the Queen spoke softly. "There are many in my empire who will call this treason." Mason shrugged. "Let them, I've been called worse." A faint laugh escaped her lips. Quiet but real. "You haven't changed," she murmured. "Still reckless. Still human," he said, and she smiled faintly. "Yes. Still human, but peace was fragile above them." New ships appeared on the horizon, sleek. Angular and black, not royal, not human. Alisera's expression hardened. "They are not mine." Mason glanced at the radar, eyes widening. "Pirates, no. Bounty hunters." A mechanical voice cut through the comms. "Target identified. Human engineer, priority capture." Sarai rushed forward, fear rising in her voice. "They followed your signal." Mason grabbed the Queen's arm. "You need to get her to safety now." Alisera's guards moved to defend, forming a protective circle around the Queen and her daughter. Mason ran toward the old base controls, slamming switches and activating defense turrets that hadn't fired in decades. Bolts of plasma streaked through the night, lighting the sky like fire. "Get to your ship," he shouted. The Queen hesitated, torn between duty and debt. "Mason, come with us," she called out. He shook his head. "Someone has to hold them off." Her eyes burned with emotion. "If you die here, humanity dies with you." Mason smiled faintly. "Then I'll die proving what it means to be one." As the first enemy ships broke atmosphere, explosions rippled across the moon's surface. The Queen's cruiser lifted off, carrying Sarai and the child to safety. Mason stood alone on the platform. Bathed in the light of alien fire, he raised his pulse rifle, the last Terran weapon left in the system, and whispered under his breath, "Let's make this count." The moon trembled beneath the weight of incoming fire. Explosions tore through the dust and stone, painting the sky in red and gold. Mason Hale stood at the edge of the ruined outpost, his shadow framed by burning towers. The old Terran rifle in his hands hummed as it charged. The last relic of a forgotten war. Above him, dark ships descended. Mercenaries and scavengers drawn by the bounty on his head. They came for money, not justice. But they would find neither. Mason took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the plasma winds brush against his scarred face. He had fought wars before, but this one felt different. This one wasn't about territory or victory. It was about one small child who could finally see the stars. He checked the energy cores, patched them together with wire and willpower. "Still running," he muttered. "Good enough." He turned toward the sky, his jaw set. "Let's see how much fight one human still has left." The first dropships landed with a hiss of steam. Dozens of armored hunters poured out, their helmets reflecting the glow of alien fire. Their leader raised his weapon, voice booming through the comms. "Surrender, human, and we may let you live." Mason grinned faintly. "That's the problem with maybes." He pulled the trigger. A blinding bolt of blue energy erupted, slicing through the lead ship's engines. The blast tore the ground apart, throwing soldiers into the air. The battlefield lit up as automated turrets Mason had reactivated opened fire. Ancient Terran defenses roared back to life after decades of silence. Each blast shook the moon's surface. The hunters advanced, relentless and precise. Mason ducked behind wreckage. Firing between bursts, his armor cracked. His breathing ragged, but his eyes, those tired human eyes, still burned with defiance. Over the comms, Sarai's voice broke through, filled with static and panic. "Mason, the Queen's ship is under attack. You can't fight them alone." He smiled faintly. Not alone, not really. He looked at the sky where the Queen's ship streaked through fire. Somewhere up there, a child was watching him through a visor he had built. And that was enough. A massive explosion threw him backward. His rifle skidding across the ground, he crawled toward it, coughing through smoke, his vision blurring. The enemy leader landed nearby, towering above him, blade glowing red. "You should have stayed hidden, human," he snarled. Mason looked up, blood on his lips. "Yeah, I tried that once. Didn't work." The blade came down, but Mason triggered the pulse detonator in his glove. A surge of EMP energy exploded outward, shorting every suit, every drone, every weapon. The battlefield went silent. The hunters staggered, their systems failing, and Mason stood, limping toward the center, holding the last detonator core. "Funny thing about humans," he whispered. "We don't know when to quit. From orbit." The Queen's ship turned back. Her voice echoed across the comms, filled with shock and grief. "Mason, stop. You'll kill yourself." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, But maybe I'll save a few others. He looked up at the stars one last time. Tell her to keep seeing, he whispered. Then he pressed the trigger. A blinding light consumed the outpost, a wave of pure energy spreading across the moon. The enemy ships shattered like glass, flames spiraling into the void. When the light faded, there was only silence. The base was gone. The attackers vaporized, and the old moon burned softly in orbit. On the royal ship, the Queen stood motionless. Staring at the empty radar, Sarai fell to her knees, tears streaking down her silver skin. The child pressed her small hands against the viewport, whispering, "Mason." Through her visor, she could still see the light fading, the light of a man who gave everything so she could see. Alisera turned away, her voice breaking. "He's gone," Sarai whispered. "No, Your Grace." "He's not gone," the Queen frowned. But Sarai pointed to the stars beyond the viewport. "Look," she said, and there, across the blackness, a faint blue shimmer moved among the constellations, like an echo of light that refused to die. The blue light lingered where the moon had once shone, a silent halo stretching across the dark for weeks. Ships that passed through the Viralan sector reported the same mysterious glow, a ghost of energy no science could trace. Some said it was a weapon residue. Some said it was radiation. But those who had seen what happened that night knew the truth. It was the echo of a human heart refusing to fade. In the royal palace, Queen Alisera walked alone through the Hall of Stars. The walls glimmered with holograms of past rulers, war heroes and victories carved in light. Yet tonight, one new hologram stood at the center of the hall. Breaking centuries of tradition, it was not a Viralan, not a royal but a human, Dr. Mason Hale. His image projected in blue light. Holding a small visor in his hands, the Queen stopped before it, her eyes soft and filled with memory. Around her, members of the council murmured in disbelief. "Your Grace," one whispered. "To honor a human like this, it's unthinkable." Alisera turned to them, her voice calm but unyielding. "Once we called them monsters." She looked up at the hologram. "Now I call him teacher." She raised her hand, and a new law was inscribed into the royal archives, the Edict of Sight, declaring that no species would ever be forbidden from helping another again, that no child, human, Viralan, or otherwise, would be left in darkness. The council bowed and the Queen spoke softly. "He showed us what our power never could. He gave us vision, far from the palace. On a small garden moon orbiting the royal world, a little girl ran beneath the blue sky. Her visor was gone now, her eyes clear and bright. She chased the light of the dawn, laughing, calling out to her mother, 'Mother, I can see everything.'" Sarai smiled, tears in her eyes, watching her child run through fields of silver grass. Every step was a miracle born from human hands. Sometimes the Queen visited them in secret, dressed not in armor but in plain robes. She would sit with Sarai under the trees and watch the girl draw patterns in the air. Every night before sleep, the child would look up at the sky and ask, "Do you think Mason can see us from the stars?" And the Queen would answer softly, "He sees everything you see, my star. For you are his light." Years passed, and the story spread. Merchants told it in spaceports. Pilots sang it in low voices as they crossed uncharted space. It became a tale every species knew by heart. The human who gave sight. Some said his spirit still traveled between stars, guiding lost ships to safety through a trail of blue light. Others believed the Queen herself kept his AI alive in the royal archives, a silent guardian watching over the galaxy. But for those who truly knew him, he was more than a legend. He was a reminder of what humanity once was, flawed, fierce, and unbreakably kind. He was proof that hope did not belong to one world or one species. It belonged to anyone brave enough to care. One night, many years later, a young pilot crossing the void between stars picked up an unusual signal. It was weak, ancient, buried under layers of interference. He filtered it, expecting static, but what came through was a voice, rough, human, and tired. "If you can hear this," the voice said, "then don't stop believing in what you can fix." The pilot froze. Staring at his console, the signal ended with a whisper, faint but clear, "Keep seeing, kid." He looked out the viewport and saw it, the same soft blue light rippling across the dark. He smiled, and for the first time in his life, he understood why the galaxy still spoke of humans with awe, and so the legend of Mason Hale became a constellation in every star map, a reminder that humanity was not defined by the wars it fought but by the hearts it healed. Every time a child looked up and saw that soft blue trail glow across the sky, they would ask, "Who is that?" And the answer would always be the same, spoken in 100 languages but with one meaning. "That's the human who taught the galaxy to see."